the one before lunch, so everyone will probably get a bit fidgety as I creep towards 1 o'clock. I don't think it's going to last an hour though, so there's some time. Oh, look.
Oh, what happens? You just fiddle with this thing.
I think my display maybe went to sleep. Come and make it not be asleep. What's the settings?
I haven't touched a Mac since Jaguar.
Desktop screensaver?
Energy saver. Go back. Keep moving the mouse.
You searched.
Yeah, go faster. Energy saver. Never. Better?
Yeah.
At least I'm not doing any live coding demos or anything. Just the slide. Okay, cool. So yeah, my name's Stephanie Hosny. I'm Sales and Marketing Director at Ixus. These are my credentials, and if you want to, if you think it's good, hashtag that about it. If you think it's not, just tell me. Don't tell anyone else. I knew the music would start just as we got into the talks, but I'll try and speak a bit louder. If anyone can't hear me, just give me a shout. I work at Ixus now, again. It's a Northwest-based Drupal dev, managed support and hosting agency. To give you an idea of the sort of my role and the sort of type of company that it is, there's about 17 people in it, and I'm one of, well, there's me and someone that helps with the accounts who are sort of non-techie. Everyone else is pretty much a techie. And I get some help and support from different people in departments on sales. So like technical input and stuff. Front row, that's the best seat in the house. But I'm pretty much left to my own devices in terms of where I steer the sales and marketing focus. This talk is really not to sort of tell you what you're doing is wrong or what I'm doing is right. It's just to share a few sort of practical things that I've adopted along the way in my roles that I've found has helped. You know, and this is really just to sort of start a discussion and share some of those practical tools and tips. It's the tip of the iceberg really, but it's really aimed at people who also have to do delivery or also have to do client services. So not everyone has that sort of dedicated sales and marketing function and has that sort of freedom to just only do that role. You know, typically my role at Ixus has evolved over the years. I started off doing bits of project management as well as client services, and then as we've grown, we've got those roles. So I know what it's like. You know, I used to run a team of like 5 developers, and I was kind of the invoicing and the HR and the this and that, and then you probably got about an hour on a Monday afternoon between 3 and 4 to think about sales and marketing, and it's just where you really need to focus your energies. Done a little agenda, so just a little bit about me and why I'm doing this, and then I'll talk through some points, you know, bearing in mind that we don't have a lot of time. Start thinking about your vision, what is it you want to achieve, and how do you know where you're going to sort of go to on your sales and marketing journey. What it means to do sales, so people sort of sit down and go back to them doing sales or doing marketing, what that actually means in reality. A little bit about strategic thinking. People talk about strategic marketing, strategic communications, and I've done my diplomas in marketing, and kind of that means like writing a lot of words about product placement and positioning and price and stuff, but what does it actually mean in reality when you sit down in your office job? The pitch, so starting to think differently about the elevator pitch. People always talk about the elevator pitch, but what does it mean, and how do you actually start to write it? A little bit about competitors. It is important to look at, I think it's still, to look at the competitors, but not to get bogged down by what they're doing, to kind of use each other, especially in the Drupal community. People do support each other as competitors, so kind of how we can harness that here. And then just some techniques and tools and tips really, just to sort of start you off on your journey. So, a little bit about me, my credentials. I get involved in DrupalCamp Northwest with some colleagues from Northwest Drupal user group. So sort of try to contribute to the community by doing that, because obviously I'm not technical, not committing code back, so that's kind of my little way of doing it. And I suppose I've been coming to camps and conferences and events, talk to technical, and that's great because that's the majority of people that are here want to know about the code or the new things. But I would just sit there thinking, I don't know what you're on about, but at least, you know, people can get a little bit of something from these talks, then that's useful. There'll be no coding talk in it. I might mention Git once, and that's about it.
That's you one.
Previously, I've worked in my background is in charity, so I used to work at Age UK. Did a lot of projects there. Basically, it was sales and marketing to older people, so it was a completely different market than I'd ever been sort of used to dealing with. And now, you know, obviously it's digital and technology, but the principles are the same and they all apply. I then, like I say, ran a design agency for about 5 or 6 years. Then I had a sort of epiphany that I couldn't carry on my own anymore. I needed to go and work somewhere that had more people that were actually responsible for the financing and the HR and so on. So then moved over to work at Ixus, and my first day on the job was DrupalCon London, DrupalCon Croydon, we established we call it from now. And the first day I was just like, I've come home. I'd always sold Drupal code, but I was always just very much at the front end of it, just like, yeah, you need Drupal, and then someone here will talk to you about what that means. But then actually sort of starting to speak to the developers and understanding what it meant, I've never left. Although I did have a tiny career break. Went to work for a different organisation that was 120 employees, 6 offices across the UK, and that was good. That was something I needed to go and try and see what it was like and get my head into, but it just didn't work out for me, so I'm back here at Ixus. All the companies that I've worked for, you know, whether they're big, small, charities, whatever it might be, they've all got the same driver. So find projects that get the organisation's heart beating. And I think that's where I always start here. When I come to any organisation to start to do sales and marketing, it's like, why are we doing this? Because there's no point sort of just putting sales and marketing icing on top of the cake, because it needs to be kind of the reason why you're doing what you're doing, and the projects that you want to get need to be sort of influencing this sales and marketing, rather than it just being like just fluff, really. You know, a lot of people say that, you know, it's just the fluff on top. So what that really means for me in terms of my job is looking at what the strands of activity need to be, sort of in a really realistic way. So before, people would say, set some sales targets, and you're like, just pick a number out there, that's my sales target. Well, actually, no, because we can't deliver X necessarily. You've got to look at what your capacity is to deliver. I got to a point probably about 18 months ago at Ixus where I was just selling it till it broke. I was like, there's so much Drupal work out there, and there's so much support and managed hosting services that people need, and there's so much development work to do. We were just like, we've got too much on, and then obviously there's ways around that and things that you should do to sort of then share that workload around. But there's no point being in your job but constantly selling stuff if actually the people at the delivery end hate you. And I've learned that. I'm saying anyone hates me. So, little question. Who here is responsible solely for sales and marketing? That's their only job. And then who here then also does a bit of sales and marketing as well as delivery and maybe development or client services and things? So it's pretty much everyone. So this is really sort of targeted at people that don't have that function, and that your time that you spend on sales and marketing is quite limited, so there's not a lot of room for error. But also, typically the budgets are not massive, and the sorts of things that people kind of can come and like snake oil you with, you know, oh, come to this conference or this exhibition or this event, you know, it's only £5,000 to exhibit, you know, that's like a stupid amount of money, you know, for things like this. So you've really got to think about a lot of things that we can do for free. And a lot of this is about stuff that you can just do for free anyway, and things that you might need to improve. If you've got budget, then that's brilliant, of course. Why am I doing this? Like I said, sales and marketing doesn't have to necessarily be that sort of snake oil. it is something that's fundamental to what you're doing and fundamental to your business, and you're probably doing a lot of it without even thinking about doing it anyway. I'm doing this because I really want to build more confidence in the open source community that we are professional, and we all know that we are, but then you'll go in competition with big boys and people are like, you've got to shape yourself. I get a lot of feedback from presentations that's like, you're great technically, but you're not really put across the project management. What's the risk? It's too much danger. It's easier for us to go to Stereo or to Capgemini because there's no risk there. You've really got to sort of focus in on that. And then I suppose I'm a massive geg as well. I just like to geg in and get involved. Pardon? Oh, it's like a Scouse term, like a nosy parker, like interfering. Just gegging in everywhere that I'm not wanted. Typically. So, get started. The way I always start it is saying, do you want to be successful? Or what does that mean for you to be successful? So, sorry, I'm reading off my notes. I had too many beers last night, I'm a bit hungover. Sorry. Tweet that. I'm not bothered. That's okay, imagine. No, whenever I go to any organisation, I'm always like, what does it mean for you to be successful? What does that vision look like? And a lot of the time, they just look at me and go, shut up, like, we haven't got a business plan. It's not textbook. So I say, well, okay, what do you want? What's the goal? If I brought you these types of clients to do this type of work, does that feel right? What is it that you want to do? And I think typically most organisations will either have just purely financial targets, so they'll say we want to make £1 million in that set period, or we want to work with this many development projects and this many support projects, or whatever it might break down as. But then a lot of organisations, especially in the Drupal community, they just want to do good, exciting projects with people who are nice. And a colleague of mine always says he only ever does work that he loves with people that he likes, and he very quickly gets to the point where he's like, he's an idiot, I'm not working with it. I'm going to go over here and do this. And basically, life's too short. I know that you've got to pay the bills, because believe me, I've sold things that I've had to just sell because I had to pay the wages to people. But if you are in a luxurious position of saying, right, I'm going to set the vision, or I'm going to at least start thinking about where I want to get to, because otherwise you'll just carry on working like that in your silo and you'll never actually break out of it. So typically, it's good to look back at previous work that you've done and thought, did I enjoy doing that? Or was that 6 months dark period when we worked with that client who just totally broke our spirit for everything? Was that hideous, and we want to get away from that? And then it starts to help you understand, is it that type of client or is it just that type of person? One thing I established quite quickly was any private sector organisation that was typically working with, they were scrutinising everything on the budget because it was all coming out of their pockets, all coming out of their shares. Everything was like, it's got to be done by this time, at that time, and their priorities were elsewhere as well, because typically, again, they were the CEO of the company. Whereas a lot of the projects that I like to get involved in now are public sector, because I like to see that the vision for that organisation is about changing people's lives, or about making services better, or about making improvements. So we can very quickly start to say, well, actually, you don't need a whole website, you just need to improve this functionality, or it basically counsels. People ring up because they want to know what bin day is, green bin, grey bin, and they want to complain about a noisy neighbour or something like that, or pay a bill. That's the only three things. Right, we don't need to spend £100 million to do this whole thing, we just need to improve this. So that, for me, is much more fun than making money for some man in a suit with a fancy car. So you do start to, and it sounds twee, but you start to think about the sorts of work that you like to do. What that means in reality for me about that, just sort of doing great work with great clients, is about retention, and I'm going to talk quite a lot about retention of existing clients, because a lot of the time, practically, there's a lot more you can do with the clients you've either got now or got on your books from before, rather than start to think about new business, because new business, not guaranteed, you've got to go out, you've got to be nice. Being nice to people all the time is exhausting and time draining, especially when they're not being very nice to you. So if you've already got that relationship, it's a really great place to start. And then focus on the new business. So basically about formulating the why to get started. So doing sales, typically you start to say, today I'm going to do sales, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to think, where are all these new people I want to sell to, what do I need to tell them, and what's the product look like? Right, I'm just going to get out there and do it. Well, I often find that you'll sit there and you're like, you get that blank sheet of paper syndrome, and you're like, don't know what to do, don't know where to start. You know, it's great to think I'm going to do new sales, I'm going to change the way that our business operates today. But typically, start with your retained clients. So if you rank, usually we use like a Sage account system or some sort of finance system. You do like a printout of all your clients that you've had maybe in the last couple of years, and then rank them by how much they spent with you. Now, that's obviously a very sort of harsh way of looking at it, but you know, those are the ones typically with a bigger budget. But then also put some more criteria in there. So, was it fun working with them? Would you like to do that type of project again? And that then starts to help you sort of prioritise and focus, because often you forget as well what you've done. You know, I sometimes have to just go on our website to remember who we've worked with. So that's a really useful sort of first port of call, right? You know, focus on upselling and things like that for them that you've already got on your books. You know, making those connections again. You know, it might have been a long time since you've worked with them. One thing I'm guilty of is we have a lot of retained clients on support and hosting contracts. And if things are going well, they don't hear from us because things have not gone wrong. They haven't had to, you know, reboot a server or whatever. So there's no problems. And because they're nice and they don't complain, it's like when you've got kids and, you know, one's a complainer and one's really nice. You know, you only focus on the one that's a complainer, but then, you know, just ring the one that's nice, have a coffee with them, do, you know, extra bits, because it's at that point as well where you can say, can I make a case study out of what we did for you? Can I talk about you on Twitter? And, you know, can you recommend us to other people? That sort of thing, you know, helping them to be to remember the work that you did for them. They're then the biggest ambassadors for you. I get quite a lot of referrals now because someone will say, oh, well, you know, so and so worked with you, or you know, you did this project for them and I liked it. One thing to remember about that list, then, you know, that you prioritise them with. Not all customers are good customers, so you know, don't be afraid to either sack a client, you know, if someone's on your books and they're a pain, also to just think, you know, cutting ties. I've had, you know, plenty of those awkward conversations where you're like, I'm sorry, it's just not working out. So that's the kind of the easy doing sales bit, starting with your retained one. The harder bit, but actually, is when you start to say about new business and new sales. And whenever I start to think about new sales, I start to think, well, you know, what does strategic marketing mean? Like, what even is this terminology? But all it is the clear thinking between what are the messages that you want to get out there, who are the people that you want to get it to, and what are the tools that you're going to use in order to communicate that. Speak over. Got light in my eyes now. But it's also as much about what you don't do as much about what you focus your time on. So a lot of the time, you're kind of like, I want to tell everyone about what we do, and you get that kind of headless chicken syndrome where you don't know where to start, and you kind of scattergunning your money around. But even if you're a general agency and you do a lot of services to a lot of clients, it's very helpful to start just with one market, especially if you're just trialing out a new way of doing a new campaign, as it were. Start with one market. So, for example, you know, if you do like you've done a couple of really great children's charities or national charities, you know, just start with that segment. Just think, right, size of charities typically are going to be about that. You know, type of work that they're going to do is going to be like this. You're then going to be kind of best placed to speak to them and say, what were the wins that we got for you from that site? Or, you know, was it about conversion or extra fundraising or just brand awareness? And you start to think, what is the message that other people are going to need to hear? So you start to gather those bits of insight as well, because typically you'll sit there and think, I know what people want to hear, or I know what's really good about us, but that's all nonsense. It's what the customer thinks is important to them. You know, you have to start with that, how they're thinking, to start with that market. And the feedback that you'll get from that might be really insightful. So pick a few nice people that you know to ask those. Once you've kind of started to hone that messaging, you'll start to say, okay, well, we make these really great charity sites. This functionality that we developed means that now this user can easily do this or easily find that. And that's really great for the charity, because then that, you know, whatever the targets are, you see what I mean? Then you can start to say to other clients, other charities, this is why it's good. You know, you write the case study, you get the information out, you know, whatever the medium is, and we'll talk a little bit more about what those free or like cheaper mediums are in a bit. That's what you kind of, that's basically, you just have to be everywhere then. You know, that's all you focus on. So attending the sector events that they go to, even if it's just a, you know, a charity event, it doesn't, sorry, I mean like, you know, where they're doing learning rather than a fundraiser. And you might be like doing a blog on some charity style website, or you might be doing the tweets. It's basic common sense stuff, but it's just making sure that whatever it is you want to say and whoever it is you want to say it to, that's what you're focusing your time on, and you're getting it out there. A lot of the time, when I used to work at the charities, the third sector organisations used to say, can you do like a top tips for digital? And it would be really stupid things like, don't forget to update your website on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be anything like, here's a new module and it would be good for you, because if you think about it, most of those clients that you're working with in charities are typically going to be, yeah, they might be like an IT manager and they might be someone technical, but normally it's like marketing, communications people in those roles as well. So it's less about the technical speak and more about the sort of conversion, conversations and so on. You know, and I know it's hard, and I know some people sort of say it's old-fashioned, it's outdated, but even just ringing up, I mean, you might ring 10 people that you've never known, and yes, it's cold calling and it's hideous, but if you just ring up and say, look, we did it for whoever, this is what the results were, do you want, you know, have you got some time for me to come and tell you about what we did for them? 9 times out of 10, you know, most people will say, yeah, go on, because I want to learn, especially when it's for things like that, where you're sort of showing the saving or the time saving, the money saving, whatever it is that you can actually physically demonstrate, rather than just, isn't this website really nice? Yeah, it is really nice, but, you know, but why, you know, and then you stand yourself apart from these hundreds of marketing agencies that just colour things in really nicely, and then go, you support it, you know, you kind of, that's where we're really good, I think. And that is kind of what you would call your high payoff activity. So, yes, it's nice to feel like you're always talking to all segments, all markets, all customers, but if you're very limited in that time, you really need to focus in on that one market at one time. Did it move? It's not moving. And the elevator pitch, I don't know if people know this or bored of it, or tired of it. I get really bored of people talking about the elevator pitch. It's basically that concept of when you get in the lift with someone, can you explain what you do before you get to like the 5th floor or something? And most people say, yeah, that's really easy, you know, and then I'll meet someone at a party or whatever, or at an event, and they'll say, what do you do? And I say, oh, sales and marketing for a PHP Drupal agency, and we go, all right. Don't know what that means. No idea what that means. They don't care what that means. So you have to start to think, well, what's the pain? I hate that cheesy word. But what's the pain that you solve? Because that's then how people will understand what your elevator pitch is. So, yes, you do your PHP developer, or you've got this amazing Drupal support service. But people want to know that if they've got a high traffic website and you've got a great HA stack that you can set up for them that you can then support 24/7, that's exciting. Because then they'll say, oh, so you mean that you can kind of keep that website going and keep the conversion rates going? And you know, you start to colour it in a bit rather than just sort of going, yeah, that's what I do. I always meet people at these events, and then I'll try to link them up. So if someone will say, "Oh yeah, I'm a photographer," I'm like, "Oh yeah, right, yeah. Well, you might want." But if they're like, "Well, actually, yeah, I create like really good storybook photography scenes about demonstrating how companies fulfill their CSR," it just starts to be a little bit more exciting and starts to actually be a USP. So rather than people going, "What's your USP?" "Oh, well, we're the best at this." No, it's not really helpful. It has to kind of connect with them in terms of what does that actually mean. And then in that case, if it's right, it shouldn't really be a hard sell. Because then if you're saying, well, I make really great e-commerce websites that mean that when people get to the end and the basket, there's no empty baskets because I make sure I can convert them all the time because I do this user experience insight research, whatever it might be. It just helps to really sort of colour it in and connect it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you use a script for something like that, like an introduction, or do you have to know it so well because you live it and breathe it that it just comes out?
I think you just get to the point, don't you, where it just comes out. Like because you don't know when you're going to get asked it. I think one of the difficult things is just making sure that you make what you do sound exciting. I really fell into the point where I was like, "Yeah, I work with loads of techies, it's really boring, you won't get it." People were like, "Well, do me a favour, well, tell me what you do a little bit, because most people think that what I do is really boring. Most normal people. Well, you just sell modules, you know what I mean? So if I'm trying to say to I don't know, a council guy that wants to make he's not really that bothered about technology. He's been told he's got to use open source, and he's been told that the stack's got to do X, Y, and Z, and have limited downtime. He just wants to know that I can do that, and that and a lot of the time they're like, just put us in touch with someone who can talk our language.
So it's more of a conversation rather than you just delivering a narrative.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's lean magic to models.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of the time, most people are technical, like me. They know a bit, or they've learned a script. But I mean, it depends who you're dealing with. I mean, most of my clients are people who've got an in-house dev team, like the British Council. Steve and I've worked with them. They're in-house devs. They're technical. They know what they're doing. They've got architects. They've got testers. They've got whatever. They know exactly what they want. They need to just me to put them in touch with the techies. But then some people ring up and they're like, I need to sort, my targets are that I've got to get all these citizens online. It's like when I was working at Age Concern, it was during the point where we were taking the pension books away from all the people, and they were like, "You're not having them. I won't be paid by a cash card. I don't trust the banks." So that all had to be about building confidence and reassurance and trust, not necessarily about the fact that, this many postcodes needed to be transmitted. It was just about being nice to people and building the confidence and the trust. So you do tweak your elevator pitch, don't you, right? I know it's usually when people are sort of a bit suspicious of me as well, and they're like, "Can we just speak to someone who knows what they're talking about?" And I'm like, "No, speak to me. I know what I'm talking about." So you kind of do ramp it up and down, but it shouldn't be a hard sell. If I'm really having to sort of explain to someone why their website, their new website, that they need all these whiz-bang features is not going to cost £500, I'm like, you're looking for the wrong thing and you're ringing the wrong agency. And if your brother can do it, then great, do that. So you just tweak it down. I'm rambling now. Competitors. There's lots of different schools of thought about competitor research. Depends who you are and what you want to do and what you want to achieve by doing that. And there's lots of ways of doing it, but it really just depends on what you want to know. There's no point thinking, I need to do competitor research because I need to know exactly what everyone else is doing so that I'm not missing out. Because you'll always be missing out because you're not them, and you don't know what the thinking is that's going on behind the scenes there and what they're trying to achieve. You'll only know what they're trying to give you, maybe what's on their website or what's on their Twitter account. However, sometimes it's really useful to do that because it starts to make you think what message you need to sharpen. And that is typically when you'll lose out, you keep going for a pitch and you keep losing out to the same organisation, and then you're like, I need to stop banging my head against the wall because clearly I'm losing out. Maybe the conversation's about price. Maybe they're saying, well, you're always twice as expensive. In that case, I'm completely fishing in the wrong pond, or my prices are ridiculous. You know, most of us have got sensible pricing structures, but you know, I'm getting myself into the wrong situations if I'm always going to lose out on price. If I think my price is quite reasonable or competitive, you know, in the market. One of the nice things now about sort of the G-Cloud framework, I don't know if people know about this government procurement framework, it's called the G-Cloud. You can go into the G-Cloud store. There's quite a lot of Drupal and technical agencies on there now, listing their services, listing their pricing structure, listing their service descriptions. And that's also a really nice sort of way of just having a nosy, really, and just seeing what other people have put forward, what their pricing is, what they're doing, you know, as well as going on their website and just seeing how they portray themselves or that sort of thing. But I think the nice thing within open source is most people are quite nice to each other. There's a few people that are not, obviously, but you can sort of, I'll talk a little bit more in a minute as well about like having a peer club or a mentor network, and most people do it themselves anyway. You know, I had a conversation on the way here with Nathan. He was like helping me work out a contractor issue. You know, it's at these types of events where we can get a little bit of competitive insight just in terms of how we can improve. I know that we're going to lose out if we go up against certain people, but that's all right, because as long as we all put a good show on about Drupal, about open source, about security, then that's good for the community because there's so much work to go around. So as long as we can keep improving and sort of helping each other to get better, that will really help. So one really good thing to sort of look at in terms of a task is look at what you excel at in relation to those competitors though. So I know Ixos, we don't do any creative, we don't do any user experience stuff. All we do is dev, support, and managed hosting. So that's all I talk about all the time. And marketing agencies used to come in and say, you should start to say, you know, full service this. No, I'm just going to say what exactly it is we do, because then that's the customer that comes to us. Most of them are already pre-qualified. Nobody ever rings me up and says, can I have a WordPress website? You know, people know exactly what you do because you're very clear about it all the time. So look at what you excel at as well. Look at what you excel at in relation to your competitors, and just bang on about that all the time, because that will really stand you apart. Sales techniques. Sales is random because it really depends what kind of salesperson you are and what kind of organisation you're in. You know, I've been in organisations now where such a romantic music is taken away. Where it is, you know, it's all about the sales, it's all about the targets, it's all about the vision, and that's fine for that company. I've been in other places where it's like, do a bit of sales, do a bit of marketing if you want, do what you want. You know, it's very open and fluid. And I think it really depends on what kind of personality you are as well, because typically the CEO of most of our organisations is a techie, is a dev, may or may not be very good at communicating with people, might not always be the best person to put in front of a client. You know, that's why people like me make money, because we can talk to people, we can engage with them, we can help to run the sales pitch. And most people nowadays are a lot better at speaking at people, and we generally don't try and sort of send the very sort of shy people to the front, because, you know, you're playing to their strengths. So the first thing to do is think about what kind of salesperson you are, and then naturally these tools and techniques and things will have that flavour of your personality in it anyway. You know, don't try and force yourself to be the type of salesperson that you're not, you know, because you'll only fail and you'll only hate it. You know, don't try and be that sort of double glazing salesperson, because nobody really likes that. And you know what it's like as well when someone knocks on your door and tries to sell you new windows at tea time. You're like, that's not going to work with me anyway. You know, you're already going to fail. The most important thing to do in sales and in the sales process is to make sure you learn to listen. I talk a lot, I will ramble on, and it's really important when you get an inquiry or someone rings you up and they say, oh, I'm interested in this. Do you do that? Don't then just go, yes, this is what we do, and then give them the massive narrative for 10 minutes, and at the end they go, all right, yeah, what going to ask that question? So it's about, well, asking questions constantly. And throughout this kind of process, if you kind of just be asking questions at every turn, and a lot of people, typically when it's a public sector tender, you are kind of put in that box where it's like, I'm the public sector procurement person, I give you the brief, you give me your answer, I look at it, then I might invite you in to pitch, and we don't talk to each other, and there's no bribery and all that nonsense. That's fine, but make sure you're asking questions all the time. One of the things that I've sort of just listed here is a sales process and kind of typically what you might do in your process. And at each stage, it's around asking questions and qualifying a bit more. In my last place, we had these kind of red questions, and it was all about like qualifying out, is it right for us, is it not right for us? And that's fine because you know what you want, you know what you can't do, and you generally do that in your gut anyway. So one of the first things that it's kind of useful to do is kind of review what that sales process looks like. So when an inquiry comes through, what do you do? Like, what's the first thing you do? You know, do you log it in a CRM system, for example? I don't know if people use CRM systems. So, but there's a lot of really good free ones. Like we use Capsual. In my last place, we used Pipedrive. You know, you log the customer. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It's just log the inquiry, log the type of inquiry, what did you talk about, that sort of thing. It then helps because in that you can set tasks. So follow them up or send them a proposal. You know what it's like in the day. You're like jumping around from task to task. In one of my old jobs, I had a big whiteboard with it all written on, and I don't know how I kept on top of that all the time. You know, where every different relationship was at. So a CRM system really did save my life to do that. Again, you know, after the inquiry comes in, whether that's kind of online or you've had a chat on the phone, you've asked questions, then go and ask other people, does this, you know, what does this opportunity feel like to you? Does it feel right? Is it good? Yeah, okay, yeah, let's progress, let's move on. Typically at that point as well, if it's a technical inquiry, I'll usually speak to the devs and go, you know, there's normally some sort of input I need from them, or someone's asked for something like Civi CRM integration, and I'm like, we've done that before, does that seem right? Yeah, okay, right, let's go.
Just put the phone down.
Yeah, put the phone down and go, no, Civi, no, come away. At that point, if you can, ask for a meeting, ask for more information. You know, do you want to do this face-to-face? Typically, most of my clients will say, no, get lost. We're not engaging in this process because it's kind of like the big public sector procurement stuff. But in my previous roles, it would be great to have a meeting and a coffee and chat it through and talk a little bit more about what they need, because people generally ring up and ask you what they think they need. But then if you sit them down and say, why are you doing this? What is that for? What are you hoping to achieve at the end of all this? You know, you'll then start to map back. You don't need what you think you did, or, yeah, spot on, you do need that, but actually, do you know I can do this? Typically, a lot of the conversations I get into nowadays are about like multi-site and things like that. So I went away and learned quite a lot about that, and now I can sort of speak a lot more to people about that. But that, you know, by listening and thinking and reflecting back on that, it will really help to stand you apart from your competitors. Because, you know, I also say at that point to people, you are getting 2 other quotes for this, aren't you? You know, it's important that you do, you know, shop around in the market, because you might not be the right agency for them, and then you'll end up and it'll be a terrible mistake and you've all fallen out. Or when they've spoken to competitors, they've gone, actually, you are really great, you know, that is good and spot on. And it shows as well that you're not scared, you know, you're not sort of saying, don't talk to anyone else, just talk to us. You know, this whole thing about being the preferred supplier, what does that even mean? Like, does that just mean that you're someone's friend and they guarantee they're going to give you the invoice? It's nonsense. Proposals, this is really important. When you're writing your proposals, I assume most people typically give a client a proposal. Make sure you review it as best as you can, because they get really boring. Like, some of the ones I'll produce might end up being like nearly 60 pages long. Who's going to read that? Like, yes, it's lovely that they know that we use New Relic or that there's some process in there, but blah, blah, blah. Like, all the client's going to do is go, where's the price? Because when you get a quote for anything, carpet at your house, whatever it is, you just look at the price. You assume that the person has understood what you want. You know, beige carpet, that size, how much is it? Don't leave it at like page 90, else they'll just go on board. I'm going to read it. I always like sort of try and say to somebody else, could you read that for me? Or like the template, not like every time. Just, you know, is it enough? Is it too much? Is it boring? The big thing that I think will win you the work is presenting the proposal back. Now, you can't do that every time, obviously, and you won't do it if all your clients are in London and you're based in Leeds. But you will for the important ones. So if I know that that contract is significant to us, I'll say, can I come and present the proposal to you? Because then there's less chance of misinterpretation, and there's less chance of them going, £500,000, no chance. Because I've already painted the story about how it's amazing and they need to buy it and it's really important and we can break it down and da-da-da. And you can do that much better face-to-face than you can on the phone, or just by emailing it going, here's your proposal. There you go. Because as well, it kind of makes you just look like you can't be bothered. And you just went, there you go. So
you get to know the site of the proposal before you meet them, and that they have a chance to see the price, have a shop, and a reasonable conversation.
It depends. I suppose it depends. Like, sometimes that's useful to do, but you know what it's like when you give things out at the beginning, everyone just rustles, don't they? So you do want them to see it, but then, oh, I don't know. Try it out. Do a bit of A/B testing. See how I deflected that back. Also, just last part on proposals, on the sales process, ask for feedback. So, was the proposal all right? No, I'm not going to go with you. All right, but I'm sorry that you're not going to go with us. I'm really pleased you found someone that you're going to go with. Could you just maybe give me a little bit more about that? And often it will be 2 lines of just nonsense, because they're just like, well, I'm just going to go with this agency because I have a gut feeling. And it is hard to give proper feedback. But sometimes you learn really useful things. And sometimes you learn some really stinging lessons as well, which is really like, shit, really, I came across really badly. Sorry, that's one. But especially on your pitches, about getting feedback on your pitches, you know, was it clear? Did we give enough information? I did a pitch the other week and I just found out I lost it. And the guy was like, yeah, you know, you just didn't really seem like you knew what you were talking about. And I was like, I had like the techies in there with me and they were talking about everything. And I thought, that's a bit mean. But then I thought, well, we need to take it on box. It's feedback and we need to review what we did and learn it. And it's hard to hear that sort of information. I always, you know, wish them well, thank them for the opportunity, move on. It's important to be nice as well, because they might use you for something else, you know, and there's no point falling out with people and going, right, well, clearly you're an idiot, even though that's what you think in your head. It's important. If you do make the sale, and it's all gone really well, and you've got a purchase order and everything's great, post-sales activity is as important as the pre-sales activity. So when you're moving sales into production, that, I think, for me is key, that the developers are really briefed on what you've sold, plus as well, because then that's a feedback loop from them going, why have you sold a WordPress site with a Drupal agency? You know what I mean? So we've started to do these sort of onboarding sessions with the client, but also I'll fill out a debrief project form that goes over to the operations manager to put into his team. And that's just a non-salesy. This is what we've sold, this is what clients expect, and this is what the clients like. These are the things that I think you need to make sure. The client's really big on communication. They'll want this daily thing. You know, anything that will stop it being that you've sold this amazing facade and they're not necessarily delivered. Even though you know you're working really hard to deliver it behind the scenes, you'll kind of know as a salesperson what's going to trigger and get them excited. Then you've got your things like your onboarding, sort of keeping in touch meetings, where as a salesperson I try very hard not to get involved in actual delivery, because on a day-to-day basis, when a module is broken and I'm trying to explain to a client that this is the reason why it's broken and this is the reason why we need more time, that's not the place for me to be. Because if I'm there, it's going to then make it really hard for me to then say, oh, your contract's not for renewal, shall we do it again? You know, that sort of thing. It's like, oh yeah, I believe it went wrong. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. You know, you can sort of act a bit of a sort of a mediator in the middle as well. Not always able to do that because you might be doing delivery as well, but as much as you can, try to get away from that. One of the big things about the debrief, we haven't even finished, about the debrief post project. So you might have done a piece of development, now it's moved into business as usual support. It's really important to do like a debrief with the client. How did it go? Was it a success? What did you think? Overall, any feedback, that sort of thing. Gives them an opportunity to just get a lot of stuff off the chest if they were annoyed with you, rather than it festering. But also gives you an opportunity to say, is it alright if we now do a case study about that? Or can we do some tweets or a bit of PR? Thinking about writing an article about this, do you want to get involved? And most people will say yes. It's usually quite rare that they'll say get lost. And then just a final point on sort of sales techniques. Lead generation. There are quite a lot of snake oil things out there about like, do you want to buy a list of people that use Drupal? Some of it's useful, some of it's not. We bought a list once that was kind of, the built-with list about Drupal users. The data's not always that clean, it's not always that useful. There's people like Sky on there and EasyJet, and it's like, yeah, all right, I'm going to ring them. Yeah. Speak to your IT manager. No. Okay. So, you wasted $5 on buying a list that's not really relevant for you. The best way of lead generation, in my opinion, is through partnering. Have I got a slide on this or not? No. Through partnering. That could be like vertical partnering or horizontal partnering. A lot of those sales inquiries that are not appropriate for me because they're under a certain budget or over a certain budget, or because we haven't got the capacity to deliver because I know we're sold up until X, I'll then give to other agencies, people like Tigerfish, anyone that I know and trust that can do the work. I only refer on to people that I know the code's decent, though, obviously. But at the moment, I'm a bit desperate because I want to build more relationships with more people that I can say, well, actually, no, go to this person. And that's just not because I want to control it and not just say no. But it's also because if I recommend them to someone good and they get a good job, then they'll think nicely about Drupal, but they'll also think a bit nicely about me that I help them. If I say, oh, you might just want to try and ring so-and-so, but I know they're a bit rubbish, then they're going to think badly of Drupal. It's going to be a bad experience, and I don't want that. I want people to stay in the community and spend their money on that open source. But also, for our sins, we do some contracts with some big like SIs, like Logica, who are now CGI, on contracts like the British Council, because they needed a supply partner to deliver something that we could do. And at that time, we were never going to get in with the British Council to win that contract on our own, so we partnered with them. We learned a lot of lessons through it. We may or may not do it again, who knows, but especially with the public sector stuff, they have to work with other SMEs. They've got a mandate, they've got a percentage of money that needs to go through. A lot of really good agencies now on the G Cloud are doing really great work. I would start, if I was new to this, by contacting people who are on the G Cloud, just starting to create partnerships, because there's so much money that's going through there. They won't be able to deliver it all, or they might want to refer it on. So that's a really great lead generation, that just, being nice to people, basically, showing the code, showing what you can do. There are frameworks like the G Cloud, like the Contracts Finder, but for an agency of like 1 or 2 people, I don't know how relevant it is to get on there right now. I would say it's probably more relevant to partner up. But have your eye on it. There's no harm being on the framework, even if you don't actually put any work through it. And then there are these scraper tools that you can get that scrape all the contracts, things like Tracker and stuff. It's like $2 a year, I think. But I always think for that, typically a contract that will go through something like Contracts Finder, you're getting upwards of 70 or 100 applications for that one piece of work. The amount of time that you're putting into it, you're not, typically not going to get it. I might put through 10 and get through to a tender process of 1. It's like, is that a valuable, use of your time? Nearly done on it. In terms of marketing activity, the best 3 things that you can do to raise your profile is to become a thought leader. So, writing content about, you know, something, a special area in your field, or how you've built that national charity website, like I mentioned at the beginning. Speaking is one of the biggest opportunities to kind of really just get your name out there as well. And these are really good ones to practice at. So you might want to deliver a TEDx talk, but these are really good places to start practicing at. DrupalCamp North East would be delighted if you submitted a talk for a paper. It could be anything, it doesn't have to be about a module, it could be about a project or a case study. That's the most exciting thing. I think Adam's going to extend that call for papers deadline by another week, but the deadline is Monday. Symphony Live, the deadline is tomorrow, but they are absolutely desperate to hear from Drupal people. So like Cuba this morning, a Symphony speaker is going to be speaking about Symphony and Drupal at Symphony Live. They want people from the Drupal community, and they'll pay 2 nights in a hotel and you travel. You know, it's not an insignificant contribution that they're giving back. You know, I definitely recommend people to go on the Symphony Live website tonight before we go for some drinks and smile. Obviously, DrupalCon Amsterdam. Again, you know, Megan and everyone is sort of saying, come on guys, we want new talks, new faces. Jenny and I were talking last night. I'm not sure whether they're being as sort of strict, I could be wrong, about like you've got to have done that talk X times and this. I mean, obviously, you don't really want your first time to be at a big con, because it might be a bit of a and you kind of warm up to things like that. And also, as a gegging on NW Dog, I don't really organise it, but Drupal Northwest, Drupal User Group and all those ones, we're always desperate for speakers because, you know, we're like, come on, we want new faces, we want practice, and it can just be like a 15-minute talk as well. Content is the key, really, for this. It's like anything that you can write that you think is interesting and submitting that to blogs, to tech magazines, anything like, even just like tech journalists. I follow quite a lot of tech journalists now. They're always quite keen for new content. I'm not going to be writing it, but I'm going to be trying to herd the cats to write it, you know, to get in there, to get a company known. Related to that is your own website. It's like a couple of shoes, isn't it? You never update your own website, you never put the good content on there. That's really important to make sure you're reflecting back and putting good stuff on there. Sometimes people want to know when you're doing like a talk or you're writing a blog. So it's here tonight to say to people, what do you want to know from me? You know what I do, for example. What would it be good to know for me to do a talk on? And then that starts to pull out the threads of what might be good. Because you think everyone knows what you know, but clearly everyone's got different experience. The last thing on marketing activity is the best thing that you can do for free is to be nice. It's to pay it forward. It's to link people up. It's to make referrals. It's to help others out when they're struggling as well. Because people will remember, you know, you in the future, hopefully, to think of you again. But also to kind of leave a legacy. So yes, I can't contribute code, but maybe I can contribute to helping. You know, maybe it's, people might have learned something from this and take that away and apply it and then win a contract. I did like a public sector talk a couple of years ago in DrupalCamp London, and people got on the G Cloud. I was like, amazing. I'm never going to see any money from that, but that doesn't matter. They are, and they're on that framework. And, you know, it's like a ready, wet, glow, isn't it? The last thing I'll say is about BDMs. Some people might be thinking about spend. I don't know if I've got a slide on. No. You might be thinking about spend and saying, okay, well, I've got a budget. Should I get a business development manager? Should I get a PR agency? Should I spend it all in exhibitions? Again, it really depends. Where is that money actually going to be best spent? So you might hire a business development manager. It's a difficult one to articulate this, but some BDMs are great at selling really great products. So they might come from Acquia, for example, and they might say, I sold £10 million worth of product. Yeah, because that's because the product was £1 million each, and you got this, and you had. You know, if you've not got those products, they're not going to make those sorts of sales for you with certain bits in product and your strategy. I think BDM sort of pretend that. Well, yes, in my previous company I've done this, and I'm always like, yeah, but in your previous company it was a lot different from what it is now. Now it's like a small digital agency. You might, you do business cards and things as well. Average spend is £100, you know. How are you going to make £10 million again? You know, so just be aware of that. I'll probably tell you more about that over some beers. 2 final thoughts. Don't be a busy fool. Promotional activity is the most exciting bit about marketing, but it's not necessarily going to get you any work. So you can sit on Twitter and Facebook and do all of that sort of stuff and produce stress balls and nonsense. But that's just all the fluff. That is all just the fluff. It's nice, you know, it shouldn't be your focus, but, you know, in good dribs and jabs. One thing I noticed when I leave a company is if I follow their Twitter account and they never update it, I'm always like, oh, have they gone quiet? You know, what's going on? And so when you're in a company, you think, well, everyone knows what we're doing because we're doing it every day. But when you're out of it, you know, you've got to communicate, but don't focus that all the time. And also just be realistic. Know what you can achieve. Know what you're going to be able to do yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself and set yourself these ridiculous targets. You need to pay the bills. You need to pay the wages. But if you have got that baseline or that sort of fat or we know we've got enough to pay the wages, let's then go and start, you know, be like, you know, be kind to yourself. Let yourself dream a little bit. Go for a few crazy ones that you never know you look, but then focus on the ones that you know are your bread and butter and you're going to pay the wages. Tools like the CRM system, you know, you definitely need to do that. But the peer club idea, you know, even if it's just a very informal thing where you meet people for coffee or you use a group and that sort of thing, and have sales and marketing to track, you know, I'm more than happy to speak to people. Like I said, I'm a massive geek. I'm more than happy to just talk to people. If anyone wants to say, I don't know what to do with this, I don't know how to approach that, and sort of try to get that little, you know, two-way flow of support going. I talked for ages, I'm sorry, it was only meant to be like half an hour. So summary, set yourself a roadmap, think about what you need to do, make a little plan, and then just crack on. You know, don't be afraid. Make sure you're selling to the right customer, get the products aligned, the message aligned, and then how you're going to tell them. Don't sell double glazing, be yourself. Don't feel like you need to put on a shiny suit and go out there. Just be yourself, people want to buy from you. And yeah, have it. Thank you. Is there any questions except for what's for lunch?
When you're putting a proposal in, are you inclined to do basically free discovery that a client is speaking to 3 or 5 agencies and want them all basically do free discovery for them? Or do you say, okay, this is our estimate, subject to discovery, or a bit of both?
I productize discovery now.
You what?
Productize it. So I say, you know what you want to achieve roughly, but I want you to buy 5 days off me to do that discovery. Create the, you know, user objectives, business objectives, start to do the sprint backlog even, you know, what functionality do you need, what's the user story, so at the end you get something, but yeah, I won't do any sort of, you know, when they sit there and they go price it all up, I generally go 1 sprint, 9 sprints, 10, yeah. It'll be a range between 5 sprints and 10 sprints at this much and this much. If you want to know more and you want to go further, then you need to buy some discovery. This is what we do, this is how we do it. Fixed price, forget it. Obviously, sometimes you have to because you've got to get yourself in the position where you just need to win it. In that case, make sure you put your caveat, this is all subject to discovery, this is based on what I know now. You know, don't kill yourself to do a lot of time and energy into that because it's not acceptable really for them to ask that. Especially when they say, can you have creative? Number 1, we're not a creative agency, but number 2, no, you can't have creative. Because how can I say that's what it should look like when we haven't even spoken in real life? So rage there. Any other questions? You can go. Oh, hold on. Me? I edit the website to create content. Yeah.
I'm like, use people on there, and I think, God, try to explain this, and I don't even know if I can give a presentation.
All my companies, yeah, absolutely, but I don't use it. Yeah, so you might be like me in the beginning, when someone said to me at DrupalCon, do you do Drupal 7? I was like, what, 7? Where's the number? Yeah. Maybe we could have a little chat about that over lunch. I just make it up. You sit in enough client meetings and pitches and things like that, it'll just soaks in. Like you can start to talk about GitHub accounts and stuff, even though you don't even know what it means. Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you very much. Bye. Stop that. Oh, thank you.